And we will speak about ethics. We will speak about intellectual property and, of course, cybersecurity. And I would like to welcome our two co-panelists. So please, thank you so much, Ricardo. Thank you, and Éric. Welcome. Bienvenue. Welcome to Montreal. Thank you so much for joining us. As we move into this fantastic panel that really follows up very strategically following your introduction, Olivier. So we've seen, it's kind of like the triple threat, right? Ethics, cybersecurity, and intellectual property. And I'm sure we can agree each of these matters could have a whole forum dedicated to them. But it's really bringing the three together that we visualize opportunities for all stakeholders, from creators to end users, and really this one mission to improve industry practices for all these stakeholders and to work together. Does that speak to you?
Yes.
Yes.
That is fantastic. Great. So we're at the right place. So as we move forward, please allow me to introduce our first co-panelist. So thank you. And your bio is quite impressive. So I will be needing my notes. Ricardo, just bear with me 1 second here. Thank you so much. Oh, no, I would not want to do that. So Ricardo Baeza-Yates, PhD, thank you so much again for being with us. You're the Director of Research at the Institute of Experiential AI at Northwestern University. Northeastern, you are correct.
That's okay. It's a geographical bias that some people have.
I just made it into a Canadian university, which, yes, I'm confused with. Sorry about that. And basically, you've been at this for a while. We were speaking about the renaissance of AI just on the past panel on the metaverse. But you were VP of Research at Yahoo Labs based in Barcelona, Spain. And you were with Sunnyvale in California from 2006 to 2016. You're also a co-author of a best-selling modern information retrieval textbook that has been published for many years, and you won several awards, including awards for your books as Book of the Year. You have several honors, and you're a founding member of the Chilean Academy of Engineering. Encantada. It's really a pleasure to have you here. Thank you. Areas of expertise are web search, data mining, information retrieval, of course, bias and ethics on AI, data science, and algorithms in general. So this is fantastic. And you're our ethics expert here. So let's dig straight into the question. How are you feeling about this in this context today?
Well, first, I will not say I'm an ethics expert because I'm not an ethicist, so it wouldn't be ethical to say I'm an ethics expert. But
thank you for that correction.
I have learned a little bit, and I will show later what we are doing in Northeastern with my ethics lead, Jansu Jansa. And I really moved to ethics because I'm really worried about the hype of AI and that there's questions that people are not asking before doing things. And it's good that Olivier said ethics, because that's the first question we should make. And I have one slide to do like a 5-minute crash course on ethics, on AI ethics.
Thank you for having prepared that for us.
So I did it yesterday to put everything together. It's very hard. So first, I don't like to talk about ethical AI, because one problem we have today is that we are anthropomorphizing technology. So we are putting human characteristics to machines. And I guess you have read this Google engineer this week that believes that, like the Her movie, there's a person there in the machine, it's a chatbot. And of course, the chatbot is not conscious, but he believes he's conscious, that he believes that this should be treated as a person. So we are creating things to create persons or to clone persons? No, right? We are creating things to work with us and to help us. So first thing, there is the core ethical values, because some people talk about principles and there are no principles. This is based on the Belmont report that was done for bioethics. Bioethics is the most advanced field on ethics in the world right now because of medicine and biological experiments. But there you have the three of them. I will not read everything, but you have harm benefit. So basically, we need to do ethical assessments of which are the good parts and the bad parts. For example, there are very interesting problems in self-driving cars. Yeah, many less people will be killed. That's true. But some people that never were in danger will be killed too. So we need to, especially vulnerable people like women, old people, children, and so on. So we need to assess the risk. Uber, after killing a woman, although they were not guilty in Arizona in 2018, decided to sell their unit of self-driving cars. So it's very hard to train with the future because we don't know the type of accident we will have. Then we have justice. I think we all understand what is justice. We want the best for the world, especially equality and non-discrimination. We see this the main problem today with gender bias, with ethnic bias, with even religious bias, and many other social biases that are encoded in human data. And finally, we have autonomy. So autonomy is the respect to ourselves, to every person. And of course, there will be conflicts. So there's always a conflict between autonomy and justice or harm benefit. COVID is a good example. We put a vaccine for the good of all society, or I defend my belief that vaccines don't work. And we need to think about that, and hopefully these things work out, but it was not easy, and we had a lot of political tension there. Then we have the instrumental principles. We're at this list in the middle. So the things we need to worry about to make ethics work. For example, Olivier was talking about cloning a person. For example, there we have consent. Did Chomsky consent to be cloned? And then the users of this system, did the user were aware that that was not Chomsky? That's also another ethical question. So these are the things. And I put a last column that is the data and software properties, but things that they can move to instrumental principles. For example, maybe medicine, a crucial one is efficiency, that I have it there in usability. And we want to react in, say, 5 seconds, otherwise a person will die. So efficiency comes to an instrumental principle because we need to be efficient in that case. Also, there is something very important, and I will finish, accuracy. We need to be accurate in many cases. And the problem that today we are evaluating success and not failure. So how many of you will, this is the example I always use, how many of you will take an elevator that says it works 99% of the time? I hope none, if you want to take a risk. But if the elevator says it doesn't work 1% of the time, and when it doesn't work, it stops, you will take it because you know you're safe. The same happens with drugs if you go to a pharmacy. But today, people are telling, oh, this works 90% of the time. I don't care. Can work 99% of the time, but it's not ethical to ask them to trust your tool if you're not telling what happens in the 1% that you you don't know. Basically, because AI works until it doesn't work. The black boxes really don't help in understanding what they are doing. And for all the examples there are, they don't learn like us. You can change 1 pixel in a cat, and that cat becomes a dog. So they're learning something different. So I will stop there because I can talk 2 hours on that slide.
Thank you so much, and thank you for putting this together. It's very clear.
And by the way, cybersecurity is a very important instrumental principle because companies lose a lot of money when they're not secure.
Right. So that's a real business case as well.
Yeah, but that's important because it's a business thing, not because it's a human thing. So that's another ethical issue there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Olivier, to continue on what you were building on just earlier in the keynote, you are the editor of international ISO standards that define the quality of AI systems, and you lead a team of 50 AI professionals from around the world. So, can you share a little bit more about your perspective where you had to pause earlier and what you wanted to continue? Because you had some great cases from Moov AI that you shared. So we'll let you build on that and some of the other considerations you wanted to share.
Yes, perfect. By the way, I really liked what you said, and the fact that ethics is really important, but at the end of the day, I think it's responsible AI, so I totally agree. I'll give you an example. Even without considering ethics, you might think right off the bat that building something of good quality is going to be enough. It's going to bring you somewhere. Just the ability, the plain ability to be able to test what you've built and say, you know what, does it work as it should work? this is already a lot. And then you can start saying, okay, but what does it mean to build something of quality? And then here, all these attributes, they will pop up because, yeah, it needs to be fast. It needs to work. It needs to avoid cybersecurity breach. It needs to be compliant with the legal department. So those are all attributes of a solution that works well. So here, the mindset, it's all about the mindset at the end of the day. And it's not just for AI. It's for elevators. I like the example because it's in everything. Here, we're often talking about ethics because we don't really understand AI, but please trust me, AI is just another technology, but it's a technology you don't really understand underneath. But the same thing happens with airplanes and with cars. We don't necessarily know how every pieces work, but you know they did their due diligence and they deliver something that is of good quality and is pretty ethical as a good. Here at Moov AI, we saw this very often. For instance, we worked with AlloProf. With AlloProf, it's a website for students, helping them with their homeworks. And then what we did is we tried to recommend the right homework or the right resource at the right time for the right person. Okay, so this is really personalized. And then at some point we said, okay, is it ethical? Is it okay if we use the gender, if we use the age, if we use these components to then propose the right piece of content? And here, this is also a question. When I'm saying quality, I'm not saying accuracy. I'm not saying performance. Because trying to be too performant sometimes makes you do some other mistakes. So here, in my case, yes, the gender could be better to predict the right content. But then imagine the repercussion if people understand that, oh, you know what? You treat differently boys from girls. So here you need to think about this because this is part of the full product. It's making sure that the product you deliver works well, is good quality, and also is in line with the culture that we have and follows the same ethical principles as anything. I could talk about this for hours, so I'll stop there.
So we don't have hours, but we still have considerable time together. And I really want to thank Lavery for your participation. We see the logo right behind, but you're one of the major partners for this event. And thank you so much for investing, in this and being here with us today, Éric. So, Éric, you've developed your expertise through your interest in trademarks, intellectual property, and this took you here today into the technological aspects of all these elements. You're a lawyer, trademark agent, and you also head the L3IA, so there's 3 L's in there, the Legal Laboratory on Artificial Intelligence at Lavery. So Éric Lavallée, thank you again for your support for this community and also for joining us on the panel. And your thoughts so far and what you've heard. I know there's the 3 topics and you have some key points as well that you wanted to share with us.
Well, first of all, thank you for organizing this and talking about ethics, because ethics is very important. And, laws comes from politics, and politics arise hopefully from ethical reflections. Sometimes not, but most of the time properly. And these ethical questions lead to very important aspects when we have a technological project, when we want to help as lawyers accompany businessmen, businesswomen that want to start a project, and hopefully they talk to us early in the project. Among the ethical questions, which are very often the starting point, you have some core values of this society. For example, privacy, the right to privacy. It's essential. We don't want, at least me personally, I don't want all my information to travel in the cyberspace freely and be used by anybody. So we have laws that pertain to privacy. We also have laws, and sometimes it's part of the privacy laws, that pertain to bias, gender bias, racial bias. These are things that we as a society decided that are not good, that we do not want that. So while these are ethical considerations, we have the equivalent in laws. We have these laws that make sure that the companies or the development project don't go too far, don't go in the wrong direction. We also have as a value to value the work. And that's very important to protect the creators, the people that, for example, the artists that create a piece of work. We need to protect this value, this intellectual property. So this again leads us to laws regarding copyrights, laws regarding patents. So what is our job as lawyers is to try to take these ethical principles and make sure that most of the business people understand them, but they need to also comply to laws so that we follow common guidelines as a society. So that's our role in general. Now, of course, there are laws regarding copyright. For example, when we develop technology, we can take some open source approach, share what we develop with others. And sometimes it's a very good approach to make a technology be adopted by an industry. But that has to be a decision that is made by with the full knowledge of the consequence of this. And these decisions have to be made as early as possible in the process, in the development process of a technology.
So they're really strategic business decisions more than just something you just contain in a legal department. It's deeply intertwined with.
It's part
the
of the
purpose.
project
Yes.
for a start. And very often I tell to my client, what do you want? And what do you want from the ethical standpoint? What do you wish for your project? Do you want to respect privacy? And most of them say yes, yes, yes. And then what does it mean for you? And I'm sure that Ricardo can comment on what is privacy? What is the various scope of this notion of privacy?
Yeah. So I think privacy is not a problem because it's one of the human rights, and human rights are based on these core ethical values. But let me go in one I think is very important because it's not so well known, and soon will be in the ACM set of instrumental principles. So ACM is the largest computer science professional association in the world and part of the US Technology Policy Committee. And the one that I push, because there was not there, is competency. Competency are the questions that you need to ask before. So this is not the question number one, it's question number 0. And the first question is if it's legitimate to do this. So basically you did the ethical assessment and you say we shouldn't do it. And the problem that today we are auditing software that shouldn't exist. And by auditing them, we are basically, in some sense, legitimizing them. And that happens with, for example, hiring tools or people that say they can read personality from videos and so on. This is pseudoscience. It was called phrenology in the past. But then that's another question. Do you have the scientific basis for something you're doing? And competency affects everything. For example, you can have the political competency, the administrative competency. So can you decide doing this? For example, if you know the example of the Netherlands government that resigned January last year, I'm sure that no one in the government decided to look for fraud in poor people. But someone did it. And then the whole government had to resign because of that. That's the largest political impact because of wrong use of any software, even if it's not AI or not. It's you're doing the wrong thing. So you need to ask also if you have the technical competence, if you have the expertise competence in the domain you are working, maybe if you have the right team, you have the right, for example, diversity in your team. Do you have, you are including the stakeholders, all of them, and so on. Basically looking at the whole thing before to start. And then when you have all yes, like when you arrive to any country and you have to say no, the same. You have to say, yes, I have all these things, and then I can just start to work on it. But these are the questions that nobody is asking because sadly a white guy in some place like me decided to do something that was fun and didn't thought about the consequences.
Okay, so competency is the first on your list of instrumental principles.
On purpose, I put
right,
it first.
On purpose.
Because it's the number one that you should worry about.
Right. And now you're tapping into this whole YOLO mentality, right? You only live once. So what do you have to, you said, somebody, a guy that's not you, still a guy, and he's white, decided something. So
Yes, can I add something?
Please.
Because sometimes we don't think about things. Let's put the extreme example. We forbid chemical weapons after the First World War, if you know history.
Yes.
We forbid atomic weapons after the Second World War. Are we waiting for the Third World War to forbid AI weapons? I leave it there.
That is a very powerful question. So are we waiting for the Third World War to prohibit AI weapons?
Yeah.
Okay. That was not my question, Olivier. It was about the
I don't know where
YOLO.
we
What's
go
a
from there.
provocation? What's a provocation?
No, I'm not for AI weapons, just to put it there.
Good. Eric is saying everything's okay still. I'm kidding.
Yeah, so maybe let's come back to competencies. It's a good question here. With AI, the thing is, there's this hype technology and new set of capabilities. A lot of people, they want to test what you can do with AI. And sometimes you'll get out of your field of competency because you say, oh, you know what? We could test this and that and this. Oh, there's data about that. Let's try it too. But you're maybe not competent. And when there's something, when you get a result, doesn't mean it's a good result. Doesn't mean you should use the result. It's Yoshua Benjou at some point in an interview I heard, he said that anybody with a minimal skill set of deep learning could build like a autonomous driving capability. Okay, it's not very hard. It's not very hard to have something that's pretty good, but it's exceptionally hard to get it like to a level where human will trust it. It's just that it's so steep, the performance curve that you need to get to. So it's all about competency at the end of the day. And when you're out of your competency, you don't even understand what you need to look for. You're not asking the right question, and you're not looking for the right answers. So here saying, maybe you think, oh, 90% seems good because when I was at school and I got a grade of 90%, it was a great mark. It doesn't say that you won't crash and kill people with your vehicle. So this is also something I just wanted to add is let's get the right expert working with the team. Doesn't have to be, you don't have to find like a unicorn of someone with decades of experience and like a very sophisticated background in AI, but at least you have enough people with the core expertise just to challenge, just to make sure the right approach is taken, the right question have been answered. This is really important.
Is that something that you see, Eric, in terms of a need being expressed, or sometimes you flag it to your clients? These are some additional people you should think
Yeah, so we do have to flag it to clients because competency is broad. You need, of course, the technical competency to understand what you're doing with an AI. For example, if you want to train a neural network and you have different learning curves, ratios, you need to know what you're doing to have something that works and that works more than just 90% of the time. But you also need various field of competencies. For example, you need to think about the security of if you work with personal information. What's the security? What's the proper security for this? And if you might be a great programmer and AI expert, but maybe you don't have any knowledge in cybersecurity, how to protect that information. And I've seen companies getting in big troubles, losing the personal information of all of their clients because what they were proposing was a very good platform in terms of result, but it was not complete in terms of security. It did not meet the expectation of a normal consumer using that platform.
So would that be one of the biggest risks right now that you're identifying?
Yes, and I would say, well, currently, there's a lot of attacks being conducted by, in some case, foreign countries. I've seen clients losing data, but it's also losing your trade secrets. It can
And your credibility.
And your credibility. And going to the market and having to explain to all your clients, well, I have lost your data. And if you collected information without thinking, for example, if you collected without really needing it, information on the gender, medical information, or information on the religion, and you need to explain to your clients, well, I lost all of this information and now it's somewhere in the dark web. It could be catastrophic. So this is why you need to think of competency as a complete portfolio of knowledge that you need to build.
Maybe you know this example, but also can be at the level of a government. So I don't know if you know, but recently a huge ransomware that was the government of Costa Rica was attacked. And they were weeks, if not months, without services, precious services for people. And of course, if you pay this, then this becomes a business. So you cannot. But then you need to suffer until you get all your infrastructure back. But this is the largest government attack by people doing ransomware.
This is interesting. I'll come back and talk about the different requirements. So here, what you're saying is essentially requirements for cybersecurity, and also what you like. It's a full list of requirements.
Well, you need to choose which ones are important for your application. That's why I said that these columns can move, because it depends on the problem. So some are properties that are not important, but then if they're important, become these instrumental principles like efficiency or resilience, for example, for COVID. That is very important, but was not.
So here, you need to find what's important, and also you need to understand when you'll need this. So I'll give an example, because sometimes we tend to see the two extremes. A YOLO company or a YOLO project team doing things without thinking about this at all, just showing something cool. I'm exaggerating, but not that much. We see this very often. And at the other end, some companies, they just are unable to do anything because of these future considerations. Oh yeah, I cannot do AI because I need this and that and this and that, so I won't even try. There's always something in between. So you need to understand, so first, what's in this list, what's a must for us? And there's always a way, or almost always, I don't know every use cases, but if your use case is legitimate, there's a way to mitigate the risks. And sometimes you say, you know what, let's do this and we'll mitigate a little bit later before it gets released, of course. But it's important to give a little bit of freedom for experiment, as long as it's never out the door with these, the back doors and the risk into the project. But you need to find the right balance between the YOLO-ness and meeting like an extensive list of requirements without even thinking about the relevance.
Very interesting. So we spoke about the wants of creators, and if we come in terms of the wants of consumers and the rights of consumers, Éric, so maybe I'll turn back to you in terms of that. How do you feel this is evolving, and is there a framework to take these things into consideration to make sure that we answer these expectations from consumers as companies, as creators?
Well, the basic framework is common sense. You need to make sure that, if you develop a solution and you as a user feel uncomfortable using it, I've seen that, then maybe there's something missing in your solution in terms of reliability and in terms of security. But there are different frameworks. The privacy laws are a very big chunk. And when I talk about privacy laws, if we look at in Europe, the GDPRs, they do not include only privacy per se. They also include, for example, this notion of the absence of bias, the notion that it needs to be explained. And now the Canadian laws, which have been drafted in part based on the GDPRs, have this notion that we need to be able to explain to the consumers what is happening. If we have, for example, an AI technology that takes a decision, we need to have a basic level of explanation, not necessarily explaining to every consumer the deep dive on the neural networks, but at least explaining how it works and why these results are presented to you and why they are not biased. So that's one piece of the framework. And the other one is the consumer laws. In Quebec here, we have the laws protecting, an act protecting the consumers, but there are several similar laws around the world. For example, in California, there's a very strict protection for consumers, which require basically that when you pay for something, and I'm not saying paying a lot of money, but simply the fact of using something, you have an expectation that it will work, that it will correspond to what it was presented to you. If you display, for example, that your solution will resolve this and this problem and will entertain you for at least 20 hours, and the people use it for 15 minutes and it doesn't work at all, then you have a consumer problem. So it all goes back to when you build your solution, you need to take into account what are your expectations for your consumers, and then be realistic and make a roadmap. Because as we all said previously, we cannot address all these questions at the same time. We need to detect which are the most important for each project, and then make a roadmap. Maybe, for example, when I'm just doing a proof of concept, I don't need to comply with all of the details of the privacy laws because I'm just using mock data to start with.
Right.
But at one point, if I'm starting to use real-life person data, well, we have to think of privacy. If I'm starting to use, for example, a piece of art to train an AI technology, I have to think about copyright. If I'm using my own piece of art or the drawings of my daughter, then it's not too bad. But when I go beyond the proof of concept, then I have to think somewhere in the process, I am going to think about these copyright issues. And the big mistake for companies is not making a roadmap, because sometimes they think they're ready to commercialize the technology, and they have to go back 1 year in the time machine, start back part of the project, because they find out that there's a big hurdle in privacy laws, copyrights, consumer rights, and that's why we need really to set a roadmap with the developers.
That's very interesting. I was going to come to, yes.
Let me comment on what you said, because there are some interesting examples on not only in privacy, but in consent. For example, all the face recognition technology has been trained from faces taken from the web. Maybe your face. No one asked you if you wanted to participate in that research. So there's all an ethical issue on all that technology. But no one is addressing that because it's too difficult. Second, you mentioned explainability, which is very important, but also you need to be very careful because explanations, and Hinton said that in an interview that a lot of people didn't like, that explanations are after the fact explanations. So even people explain things in a way that is not the right explanation because it's the best way to do it. And for example, in medicine, it's very complicated because if you have symptoms that can belong to more than one illness, then you may give the wrong explanation, the system, and that's worse than no explanation. So you need to be very careful. There's a very interesting science paper about when you can explain or not. For other things, we should explain, like why I didn't get the mortgage or things like that. But when there's a life in the line, I think you have to be more careful. And regarding privacy, especially from the industrial side, one important topic is transparency. And transparency, again, is where people want to have extreme, like, okay, I want to know the code. I want to know everything. And then they say, well, but this is a trade secret. I don't want to not even patent it because that's my business. And the problem is that if it's a public algorithm, in the sense that the government uses, maybe you need to have some transparency. But on the other side, you always have to ask the question, is a public algorithm completely safe? Because if it's an algorithm related to justice, the people can game it. Although, for example, justice is where another place where I will forbid most of AI software, but there's no regulation about that. And I don't know if you agree with that.
Oh, yes, I agree.
This is interesting. Talking about, like, for instance, gaming an algorithm. I think gaming an algorithm is it's essentially everything bad that we talked today about. So it's not very ethical to try to game algorithms, but also on our end, and I'm talking about as a developer of AI systems, you need to avoid this to happen. And it's possible, but it's all about, you need to build a layer on top of your model. Okay, so an AI model, it's a capability. Okay, it's a software, but it's very rough. If you only rely on an AI system, you'll be like, everybody could game what you build. Your trade secret could be exposed. Your data could be exposed. This is why you need a layer on top of it. I used to work in a fintech company. It's called Flinks. And when we tested an algorithm for credit assessment. So we built essentially a credit scoring capability. Okay, and funny enough, but based on previous loans accepted or declined by finance companies, we use this information along with some capabilities from some demographic information and banking information. Okay, and what we realized when you started to test the algorithm is the younger you are, the better your credit is. And I don't know why. It was probably based on the data. There was some trend in the data. But then when you started to say, oh, you know what, that person, I'll game the algorithm. I'll say that I'm 13 years old. And then, oh, no, and even when it's not legal, because it's illegal as a child to ask for a loan, except for your parents, but that's something else. You can ask your parents anytime you like. But for a credit company, they cannot accept to borrow to a 13-year-old person. But the algorithm would loan you the money because apparently based on the trends that it's seen, the younger you are, the more likely you are to repay your loan. So here, what you need to do, you could play with the algorithm, you could try to make it better, or you could say, there are some boundaries, there's a layer that you build around and on top of your AI capability, and this is how you build a robust system that then answers all of the lists and all the requirements that are necessary for this to live for a long and happy life.
I would have checked the algorithm first. because I think if you're younger, it's more risky. So.
It was not even a problem for the algorithm. It was just a problem for it, but it was from the data.
Yes, no,
Because
I'm
it's
saying I would check the
rarely
data.
it's rarely the algorithm the problem. It's usually the data that's underneath.
So these are very interesting perspectives, thinking that we have spoken from a corporate perspective, from a startup perspective, from the academia world and, the ethics world. It's really fascinating. So just, we have 1 minute left. So just to improve industry practices for all these players all together, what do you wish for? Just a wish to improve industry practices, maybe to leave us on.
That all people that wants to develop AI software ask the question if what will be the impact in people and middle in the environment. So only do it if it's more benefit than harm.
Impact. Thank you, Dr. Baeza-Yates. Thank you.
AI developer in AI, we're 10 to 15 years lagging on software development in terms of quality evaluation. So let's please bring this forward and let's make sure that we're building quality.
Thank you, Olivier Blais. Thank you.
From my standpoint, I think I agree with the two other presenters, and I think it's important for any company to have a plan, have a roadmap, have a strategy. So think about it when you start your business.
Thank you so much. 3 incredible individuals. Thank you for your time, for sharing your wishes. We have 3 wishes. Now let's make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.